in the winter of 1947. I came down, it was a very bitter cold night, and the old house, of course, was here, and there were 3 houses here, and nobody was living here. They lived in the city in the wintertime. And you could reach up, you felt like you could reach up and grab stars. They were popping out of the sky, because everything down here was black. No lights, nobody lived there, you know. It was just like in the primitive time when the Indians were here, I suppose. And they took a house from, they made a house out of the old army barracks, because World War I was just over, you know. And so they started with that, and that became the living room later, from which they added bathroom, kitchen, dining room, and 4 bedrooms. But it was all built in pieces, so there was no stability in it. You had to pray hard about windstorms of any kind, or heavy snow, or whatever. But it lasted until 1975, when we took it down and the other 2 houses, took them all down. And it just looked like a park here. It was so beautiful, with no buildings. It was just so beautiful. I said, really, it's a shame to put a house here. The people who lived there sold it to a builder who promised to have 1 house for every 2 or 3 acres, something like that. And the family then left and went to retire in Florida. But he had a major heart attack, and I think he died then, down there. So she had to come back. And the building just fell apart at that time. It was in the early 80s when you couldn't have sold this house for anything. You couldn't sell anything. It was a bad time. And so they had to get another builder, and later, and then he put 4 houses to 1 acre instead of 1 house to 3 acres, you know. A very sad situation. My husband did. The day he got out of service, I have a picture of him. You have it. And he went down there all by himself and caught a rock almost as long as he was. That was in the fall. He got out on his birthday, which was November, and what year was that? 45, that's right, that's what I said. And he had not been home in the whole 3 years of his service, because he was down in South America and running a boat between South America and Ascension Island off the coast of Africa. And when Tom was on his trip around the world, he went way out of his way, but he had to see Ascension Island. And they actually got up on the island, which is not easy to do. And it was owned by the British. I think it still is. British Air goes there. Imagine that. Oh, fish coming up here in the winter to spawn. Rockfish come up here and spawn. And when we had the big ice storm of 1976, 7, went into 7, they were driving cars across the bay. It was that thick ice. And I saw people from Berrywood come walking down here, and 1 or 2 people put a hole in the ice and sat there. They had a folding chair, they undid, and sat there. And a little while later, I'd see them go away with a string of fish, big long rockfish, and take their stuff and go back home. And you know, the amazing thing that year was that everybody from Berrywood must have had skates. There were hundreds of people coming down the river, and it was such a beautiful sight, all dressed in these warm, colors, and it was so pretty. And I never saw it again. You remember, what's her name? Dorothy Hamill? Yeah, the big ice skater, yeah. And so one time I had fallen straight down like that, and I thought I broke my ribs. So we go into the hospital to have it checked out. So the nurse at the triage calls in the back. She says, "We got another Dorothy Hamill," because it was icy everywhere that day, and they had a lot of injuries. Another Dorothy Hamill checking in. Only I was 50, I think. has. It's changed a great deal, because back then when I first saw it, and those summers, there were a few houses along the way. The Calders lived over there, and the Rose Hall, her family lived there. Stanley Blair and his family lived there. So that was 3 families, had homes over there, but they were really covered with trees, and you hardly knew there was anything there. And then the big point down here, the first point we see from here, is there was a farm there. We called it Jenkins Farm. And my husband and I were young then. We climbed that hill. It was a pretty good hill, probably 15, 20 feet. And got up there and there was nothing but a farm. And now it's full of houses. Well, I didn't really raise them here. They spent a great deal of time here every weekend, and lots of time in the summer. We had our own 26-foot powerboat that we take on trips. We rediscovered the entire eastern shore, Chestertown in particular, quite a few times. That was our favorite trip, I guess. And when we moved here in '76, Jim was away at school at William and Mary for his 3rd year, I think, and Tom was at Andover High School for his 3rd year in high school. And they both wanted to stay where they were. So we had tables down there and umbrellas, and there was a tree right at the bottom of the hill, and what they call a cottonwood tree. It was the ugliest thing you ever saw, but it provided shade, and we left it there till it died. And we get high water there once or twice a year, and I think eventually that'll kill some of the trees. It's Cattail Creek. We used to have zillions of cattails. When I was here first, I remember that whole area back here was filled with cattails.